Hello, people. This week I decided to read Cibola Burn by James S. A. Corey. This is book 4? Book 5 in the series? I don't actually know. I'm running through them. I say running. If I weren't doing this YouTube channel and trying to, spread out my videos per week, I would have read all of these just back to back. I'm going a little slow, which I don't always hate. I like to sometimes take a series slow. But I'm 4 or 5 in now. And I have to say, I absolutely love this series. All the good things anyone else has said about it, I agree with, basically. It's fantastic. This one was no exception, mind you. This one was good too, but I'm at the stage where now I'm starting to get a little worried, right? And I don't know if you've had this happen to you, where you're in a good book, right? The good book is going, and you start to get worried about the authors or author. This is authors. I think it's 2. You start to get worried, like, can they stick the landing? I'm at that stage now where I'm enjoying myself completely, but I'm starting to worry about, can you stick the end? Not for any reason, right? Not for anything. There's not been one book yet that's not held up, right? It's into the bargain, so to speak. It's just a general worry that I have. That's a complete side note. In any case, this book, Cibola Burns. I didn't look up that name. I don't know if it means something. It does sound really cool. This book starts, all of the books go, I believe, every chapter's a different character, and then they repeat, right? So, Baja, Holden, LV, right? These are the main ones, I believe, in this book. A lot of Holden, the captain of the Rocinante, right? But then it will shift perspective. So when it's Baja, it's sort of the world through his view. When it's Holden, it's the world through his. They don't know the things the other one knows. Vice versa, right? The authors really hold up to the point of view that they're taking at the time they're taking it. And of course, you, the reader, know such and such happened over there, but this person doesn't know. And so you can see events unfold in really cool ways. It allows for a broad open story, right? These wide arcing things can happen because I don't have to fold everything onto one character. It starts to sound unrealistic if one person does 95 different things, right? So in that sense, I get a much broader story that I enjoy. We start with Baja, and the name sounded familiar instantly. In the other book, the girl May was the one they were trying to save. Now, her father had an argument with the guy named Baja about their kids. And Baja didn't want to hear it, right? It's a tough situation. The satellite they were on, I think it was like a station, was attacked, and he thought his kid was dead. Katoa. Well, that story finishes, and the guy saves his daughter. But we now know the Baja didn't save his kid, right? So that's how he takes it. That this other person, this other father that I knew, didn't give up, and his kid's alive. And I gave up, and my kid's dead. Now, his kid might have already been dead. But, emotions don't always work on reason. But it's cool that we have that callback, right? I feel like it gives me this depth that, again, it felt when I was reading the other book that it was just a passing moment. But then there are these tendrils that now go out, that I'm connected in all these ways out into this universe that they're building. It's very fun. I love callbacks. In any case, the Baja now has taken his family through the rings. The rings being alien technology that lets you go across the universe, right? Like a teleporter. They don't tell you that. So if you haven't read the other books, you'll pick it up eventually. But it starts with just a guy on an alien world. Yeah, so you just pick up Alien World. Now, I'm trying to think if you lose a lot not reading the other books. This one functions. They function individually, but I would read them all. I would highly recommend you read them all, even if you're a casual reader. Baja is heavily affected, obviously, by his kid's death, and now he's on this new planet where he wants to start his new life. And he sees this corporation, the Royal Charter Energy Corporation, as antagonistic to that life. And to that end, he and his friends decide to blow up a landing pad so the Royal Charter can't come down. Royal Charter being the corporation that got the rights through the UN. So they have official ownership. The other ones are squatters. It is a whole planet. You can see the headbutts that are about to happen. We cut to Elvie. Now, it does this fairly early on, but it's also consistent with this throughout the book, this thing that I'm about to mention. Because it's her as a scientist now, her inner perspective isn't about Royal Charter. It's not about this kid who died. It's not about the settlers. Her whole idea is the science of it. So she's concerned that they don't have a clean biosphere, that these settlers came. She doesn't care that they're settlers. She doesn't care that they're squatters or whatever. But she is concerned with the fact that they have, she's concerned that they've sort of sullied a pristine biosphere. That we know nothing about it. She would like to study it as sanitized as she can without any of us interfering with it. So, from her perspective, the fact that you shed skin, the fact that you're shedding hair every time that you poop or pee or sneeze, you're introducing into this biosphere thousands upon thousands of bacteria, of different elements that could affect it in who knows how many ways. And that then we don't get the clean readout we could have had, right? A lot of her thinking in these early chapters is things like this. It's her collecting samples of little weird alien lizards and how the technology, instantly kills them, takes thousands of samples instantly, preserves them, sends the data up, via beam, cellularly, I guess, and then that beam goes out to the back planets and people are already studying them. The fastness of science. But to me, I also like that we get to walk through those moments, right? A lot of books, I want to go into space. I'm not going to go into space, right? I want to fight goblins. I'm not going to fight goblins. But there's a lot more that happens than just fighting goblins in a fantasy book, right? It's trudging through wilderness. It's seeing mountains. It's living off the land, etc., etc. It's the same with a sci-fi book. There's all these things about space that could be fun that I get to experience through a good book if they find a way to give it to me, right? It's not just everything's action, everything's explosions. I want to feel what it's like to be on a ship in extended times. I want to feel like what it's like to be on a bigger size, a smaller size ship, a ship that's crashing. I want to know what it's like to walk on an alien planet, to be gathering samples, to be the spearhead of science, right? All these elements, all these, just you actually walk through it, fun moments. This book is filled with them in various different ways through all of the various characters. It's very, very fun in that sense. Now, Elvie does say something that, the character is very casual because she's very scientific, but it's a heavy statement. She goes, what does she say? She says something to the effect that the environment will eventually figure out how to use us, right? And then you think about it. You could land on an alien planet, and everything could be fine. But that just could be because some oil on your skin prevents such and such amoeba, parasite, insect from just getting into your body. And that if it got in, it might multiply in the billions and just eat you from the inside out. And not even maliciously, just as a natural course of what it does. It's used to eating this type of tissue. That tissue's rare on the planet, but you're numerous in it, right? This kind of thing, and you're like, people, humans, we could die horribly in space, but we could also die horribly on planets that seem completely fine, completely okay to live on. I'm like, it looks like Kansas. Yeah, but you're breathing in small little microscopic things that are going to build up and eat your liver or something, right? They're just, the way she's saying it, we're just big sacks of stuff that eventually something could figure out how to be useful to it. I'm like, I thought that was such a great concept. There are alien artifacts on the planet. So you get the sense of exploring a new planet. That's fun. Like if I went to Mars, I'd look around. That would be fun. But it also would be a lot of fun if there was like a Martian pyramid, right? An obelisk, some structure to walk into. That'd be even funner, right? And, as long as we're making a book, might as well put the fun stuff in it. That's what they did. There's the big kind of a ruins, old buildings that are not in use. They didn't choose to live in it. I don't know why. I might have chosen to live in it, or maybe they just think, it's kind of spooky. In any case, they're there, and of course, naturally, it will pull your mind a little to think about these things. But that pull, it's almost like the authors understand that amount of pull, because it doesn't detract. It's just enough to fire that little exploration want in you, and then in your head you're like, I think we'll get back to it. And they do eventually get back to it. The landing pad does blow up. Now, they weren't trying to kill people, but the people did get there early. So Arbaja was trying to stop the explosion because it looked like it might affect the flight, but the other cats weren't about it because, once you start a terrorist plot, it's hard to control. It blew up. The shuttlecraft crashed. A few people died, including the would-be governor. So your authority from RCE. And the secondary, sort of who you're left with is a man named Mertry. Mertry becomes a sort of villain, the antagonist, sort of, through the book. And he's a little bit psycho. Like a little bit like he's the kind of cat who wants a badge and a gun or to be in the army. And yes, he will do all the right things, right? He doesn't break the rules. But if he can shoot somebody, he probably will. It's that kind of an energy that he has. He's very maniacal. He's very maniacal. Up in the ship, up in the Edward Israel, his second in command is Havelock, which is another very fun callback. Havelock being Miller's old partner on Ceres Station. I mean, it's just a very... Now, it just says his name and you know it if you've read the other books. If you don't, he's just a person in space, and the crew eventually tells you of this connection. So it doesn't negatively impact you, but it is more fun if you knew these things. He's up in space and he's having them, you can see through him what did we say? The sort of cult of personality that this Mertry has. His drive brings out in others a similar drive. And what you end up with is, you would think, okay, they're not acting appropriately. But as the situation gets more tense, his confidence makes that seem like the right thing to do. The interludes. This was very cool to me. This was, what does it say? It reaches out, it reaches out, it reaches out, it reaches out. 113 times a second. Nothing answers, and it reaches out. And the rest of the chapter goes like this. It doesn't have a chapter number even. It's just called the interlude. It's very poetic. It feels like a computer at work, but mixed with poetry, which is a lot of always, in your head, emotion. So it's a cool pairing to me. It gives you a sense of an actual computer trying to reboot itself, reprogram itself, restart up. And this is your protomolecule, right? This is the technology, the whatever ancient race had left over. So what we have is sort of programming at odds with itself. If one programming says we go this way and the other says we go that way, and they sort of start to clash, what starts to happen in that clash? Because it's in the course of these interludes, it's supposed to find the problem, why these things got shut off. Now, the working theory is that there was a whole civilization that spanned multiple galaxies that had all this amazing technology that found something that killed them. And so to stop the spread of the virus or whatever it was, they quarantined. Tell me if it sounds familiar. They quarantined and eventually shut the system down, sending out everyone a program saying, find the solution. When the solution's found, we'll turn everything back on. But everything never turned back on. So either they all died out, either there's a pocket of them still alive, and they're too afraid to, they haven't found the cure. Whatever it is, it's unresolved. And this is a program trying to find it. And what he does is, it's like turning on the lights, right? So he's turning on all the lights, and some of the lights won't turn on. And as he goes around, and it says he goes in and dies, and the program remakes him. And he goes in and dies, and the program remakes him. And as he keeps dying and living and dying, by the negative space, you see what it is, right? So it's an outline of something. Just by the fact that I can't go there, right? If I can see everything around something, but not something, it has a kind of a shape, no detail yet. That's what he's doing. That's what he's looking for. And that's what he's slowly piecing. And of course, he thinks a piece may be on this planet. So, when our hero, our heroic crew of the Rocinante get the call, Holden gets the call to go to this planet because this explosion happened. And they want a mediator who no one would disagree with. And Holden, being famous for transparency that may have started 2 wars. They're like, he's the perfect one. No one will really argue. He's very famous in space. They send him. He might not have wanted to go, but then the Miller clone, the Miller ghost, which was a character from one of the other books, who died, but then the protomolecule resurrects, uses, right? It's not vague, very confusing. He himself says, I'm not that Miller that you knew. I'm a program. But I'm a really good program, and the closer I am to that thing that you remember, the more accepting you are of me. And so on the one hand, it's the face of this thing that you trust. And on the other hand, Holden knows it's the protomolecule, and it doesn't care about me. If it can get to its end through me and my crew, it will do that. It's this sort of tenuous relationship. But I as a reader, I really enjoy whenever Miller shows up. I enjoy the dynamic. I enjoy the character still existing, even though he died, or maybe he didn't die. because the proto-molecule makes rules, not rules, if that makes sense. Physics doesn't count. It's just this one little spot where the science fiction just goes ham. He agrees to go because the Miller ghost wants him to go. And I remember reading this part and kind of laughing because I'm like, Holden is just the kind of cat you would send right to a powder keg. Surely nothing can go wrong. He's not afraid to step on toes. He really isn't. He has a moral compass, and he follows that moral compass, and he has a crew, and he loves his crew. And so it's like, okay, the Mercury guy. It comes to a head with the Mercury guy towards the end of the book, obviously. And he flat out says, like, if my boy Amos is dead, I'm going to kill you. That's just how it's going to be, But if he's not, we'll go through the justice system. But when it comes to his crew, he goes, he's personally right against killing. He doesn't like it. He'd rather things be all done peacefully. But like, almost out of respect for how much he loves his crew, for how much they care for him bringing them into the situation. He's not going to allow harm to come to them without retribution. So it's almost at a cost to him that he'll do this thing. They go down, him and Amos go down to the planet. The pilot, they keep him up in the sky with the Rocinante. And Holden's girlfriend, Naomi, stays up because she's a belter and she's not used to the gravity anyway. She could come down for moments, function, but she has to go back up before, she gets damaged or she needs to take a lot of medicine and exercise to get used to it. They get very long and elongated because they're born and live in space for generations. Very, very cool. Almost in passing do we bring this up. But he goes down, him and Amos. They go into town. Town comes out to start talking to him. Starts to be a to-do. And Mercury shoots a guy, like, in the head, in public, in front of everyone, Holden included. And, like, one, it's him showing, like, he is an absolute psycho. But two, it's obviously a power play. He doesn't want the town to think that the UN mediator is in charge. He wants the town to think that it's him in charge. And he's always constantly talking about this company and doing right by this company, and we never let go of our claim, etc. And maybe because I just read it, but I got the sense of the Portuguese explorers, right? And how off-kilter they sort of got when dealing with various native peoples. A lot of vicious killing, a lot of imperious type thinking. And at some point, the author uses the example of the Spanish explorers of roughly the same time. What does he call them? Holden calls them Cortez. So when you read it, I feel like there's some basis in history for this type of behavior, as almost out of sync that it feels. You have to remember, they're, in world, they're on the other side of the universe, basically. In universe, they're practically, in practical matters, 18 months away from civilization. So if you did anything wrong, it would take the cops 18 months to get to you. Right? And that time lag does have an effect. If somebody were that far away, you start to let them run themselves, because who has the time? You've seen a lot of court cases where public outcry matters. The public outcry is going to die in 18 months. Public's busy. But all these time delays make it so that he has this sense of being on the other side of the world, like these explorers used to do. And that in his mind, civilizations are carved out, with a knife. They aren't pretty and they aren't nice. And that it's men like him who will make it. So that if he has to make a bloody path, he'll have enough time to clean and sanitize everything before the normies come. But the civilization on this planet will be in his image, so to speak. He gets this kind of a way about him. He's a problem. He's not a bloodthirsty killer, meaning he's not just randomly killing people night after night, but he is a snake that will bite, if that makes sense. I believe at some point, Holden, an RCE soldier, and LV go out to look at the ruins or to look at something on the planet, right? And in the course of being out there, they see a creature. And it's a creature he's seen before on another alien craft, right? So when the ring first opened, everyone was stuck sort of in the what do we say? In the station. The ways out weren't allowed. And it was in lockdown. And the center of it was the key to opening it up. And he went in there, and in there he saw these weird type drones, right? And this is a style motif that is consistent with the ancient race, the builders, the protomolecule. However they ended up saying it in the book. They say it multiple ways. Meaning that race that came before. And one of the characters in the book says it best. They say the designers may not make a distinction between animal and machine. On the side, I think that's actually pretty cool. I think if you could look at the human body as a machine, it'd be, obviously, the most advanced machine you can find. It energizes itself. It heals itself. It can change its uses by doing various activities. It's good in any terrain, etc., etc. Just actually the mechanics of how fingers move, of how elbows work, of how ligaments hold things, etc., etc. If you were an alien race and you looked at all organic matter as a machine that you could mold and then add your technology, nano particles, carbons, etc., etc. You know how we 3D print stuff. If we 3D printed with some carbon and some insect, we could merge the two, we'd be making some pretty useful machines, but they could also be pretty funky looking if you had no concept of them. This is what we have a lot in this, where it may be more limbs than is necessary. It may be, like spider legs, a rhino torso, just a broad machine torso, and a massive crab claw, right? These kind of weird things, tentacles stuck together. These are throughout the book, but this one happens in this spot. It comes up and it's just around them, right? And they're not sure how to take it. He knows, he saw a Marine shoot one and it just, ripped the machine apart, ripped the Marine apart. So he's like, I don't like the look of this. But the RCE person, blasts it away. They blast it, then they burn it because he's worried about it. But he doesn't like it. From then on, he's like, that's all I needed to see. I'm ordering, my order is that everyone get off this planet before the alien crap kills us. Basically, is his words. Of course, Mercury's going to want to fight him. But I think, now it doesn't say specifically, but I think this aggressive action set off the technology. Because not long after this, the moon melts. Their words. It just starts to melt. And I'm like, that just sounds cool. They could see molten slag coming off of it. I don't know what exactly happened with that. But the moon melts. The moon melts, and then on a spacewalk, which again, I like taking spacewalks, but I've never taken a spacewalk, if you know what I mean. They're on a spacewalk doing some minor thing to the outside of the ship when the guy looks and sees a light spark on the dark side of the planet. And it gets so bright that it looks like day on the dark side of the planet. Then he sees the ocean. Again, he's in space now. he sees the ocean just sort of ripple like this. And there's a chain of islands, and they just disappear. And it's like, what do they say? It's like a dinosaur level extinction, apocalyptic explosion on the back end of the planet. And I just think it's cool, again, to walk through these moments, to walk through an extinction level event. Like, this is why I got this book, right? Not knowing this was in it, this is why I got this book. Seeing, like, in your mind, if you saw the explosion that killed the dinosaurs from space, how cool would that be? This is kind of the vibe it's giving you. Very, very fun. In any case, he calls down to Holden, Alex, the pilot. And he's like, boss, it's the end of the world. You got 6 hours. What do you do? What do you do if there's 6 hours? Now, clearly, they have one shuttle or two shuttles and the Rosie. And that's not going to be enough to get everyone off. And if you tried, half the people would fight you. They might fight inside the ship. No one might get up ever. But you have, I want to say like 1,000 people? Some number like this? 500, 700 people on this planet who are about to die. Which is another thing I like about this book. The numbers of people are small, right? It's sort of an intimate feel. But the consequences down the road will be large, right? The entire rest of the galaxy, the Martians, the Belters, everyone on Earth, rest of humanity is watching this one point. One, to see what happens, but then two, afterwards, the legal ramifications, the political ramifications. Everything's waiting for this thing to tip whichever way it goes. But our characters in that tip don't have to concern themselves with any of the wider scope. So it allows for a broad story and a small personal story at the same time. It's very, very great writing. In any case, of course they decide, let's go in the alien ruins. They might have been here for 1 billion years. Hopefully it can survive. And it does a great explanation of, this hellacious wind, this shock wave, this constant rain, this just horrible situation to be in. It does a great job of explaining it. This afterwards now is sort of your back end of the book. This is your second half. And, sort of symbolically and, literally, that storm wipes away essentially everything we were concerned about before. It's no longer about this shipment of ore. It's no longer about this side or that side. They're all now just trying to survive. The rains that come after this explosion are radioactive. They only have so much food. They try and send a shuttle down full of food and stuff, and the planet destroys it. It sends out a probe, a shot from somewhere, from some gun, probably from one of the other moons. It destroys it. And they figure it's a defense system that, and I wonder if the explosion was a defense system too, that now that the technology is awake, it doesn't like things that move fast. It showed us that before. It's showing it us again. So I can slow drop some supplies, but now I'm down to one shuttle. I lost that pilot. I lost all those supplies. But I have this other shuttle, but it can't come down. So I have all these people trapped. Radioactive rain. Running out of food. But then, of course, it gets worse. Because you have all this mud everywhere because there was a tsunami, massive storm with heavy winds. Out of this mud come these weird slugs. Sluggo's not that much of a problem. But if it touches you, you die. And you're like, okay. It releases some kind of oil that if it just touches you, you die. And so it's like, they're everywhere. There's thousands of them. And they constantly crawl up and then they crawl on things. So they're trying to swarm all over this ruins they were in. You go outside and set up plastic and they crawl up onto the plastic to get out of the wet. They're constantly crawling for you. Anyone touches you, die. I'm like, that's terrible. It gets worse. I'm like, of course it gets worse. They've been on an alien planet. They've been breathing air and drinking water. They got infected with something. This something is making this sort of a green algae haze crap grow on their eyes, right? So they're slowly going blind. And I'm like, okay, that's what I want, is to be blind on a planet full of death slugs that are sort of just creeping around constantly. Yeah. You're going blind, death slugs, and in the middle of it all, of course, who is immune to the blindness? If not James Holden. James Holden's immune to it somehow. And it becomes a race to figure out how. He's running around as the only man who can see. Helping, some he needs to help put batteries together to make cars. He's trying to help crews get supplies before they go blind. The supplies can't land close because they're just hot dropping them through massive winds that are running overhead. He won't be able to get all the supplies if he's by himself. He also won't be able to save everyone from the death slugs. So he just runs like hot for like 3-4 days straight with no rest, because it just has to get done while they're looking at his blood. Now, when he was on Arrow Station in book 1, he took a massive dose of radiation that should kill him, but we have, of course, sci-fi technology. So if he takes his meds consistently, it keeps the tumors away. Well, him having taken that medicine and being saturated in it means he doesn't get blind. So they can use this to unblind people, which is the eventual solution there. He's going to go with Miller. He's like, fine now. Miller waited, but now he's like, I got to fix what Miller wanted. Because him and Miller have the sort of same idea. And the idea isn't, as bad as death slugs or blindness. To them, what they're thinking about, they're sitting on an alien planet. There are these weird ruins. But he understands, an advanced race made this stuff. But then something shot that race in the head and killed it. And if part of that something's on this planet and gets out, what's to stop it from destroying humanity, so to speak? He has this thought in his head. So he's sort of as curious as Miller to get to the root of this problem. So they start rooting around inside the building. He finds underground shafts, deep, quick transports that's going at 400 kilometers an hour or something. This kind of situation. And what you end up learning in the course of this is the purpose of this planet. Now, they've hinted at it as they went along, that it's not natural. But what it is an entire planet built into a self-running factory. That the rare earth metals there, the same ones they wanted. I forget what it was. Some uranium or some kind of rare earth metal. It doesn't matter. What matters is that it's there on that planet. And so the builders, they call them, changed the entire planet to be a massive factory. There are huge chasms that could fit battleships that are just storage houses for the drones that are, as big as buses or bigger, that claw their way through, that make tunnels, that fix the tunnels so that they can access different parts of the literal factory. The factory being a power plant. This entire planet they turned into a power plant. These creatures, these machine creatures, mine the ore, transport it, send it into the whatever furnace to turn it into energy. That energy then gets beamed out into the greater system, whatever their old system was to be used. That they don't even bother living on this planet, because who lives in a power plant? Nobody. You just need to check it every so often. But that they're like, we're on an entire planet that somewhere deep in its core is a massive fusion reactor. And on the one hand, you're like, that's incredible that you could have that technology. Two, if we had it, I think we'd do the same. If we could turn one of Jupiter's moons into a power station that powered the entire Earth and no one had to pay any energy bills, I think we would do it. Right? Certainly. Why not? They're not different from us, I guess, in that sense. But it's just so... Again, this is where the real love of this book comes from. These bits at the end where we really get into the protomolecule and the ancient race, they take big bites, big conceptual bites, and just really lean into it. This whole thing is a machine. Miller put himself into one of the drones to maneuver around. Mercury comes, and of course, he says, Mercury and LV come. They all end up going to look for Holden to help him. Mercury wants to kill him because he's maniacal. But when they get to Holden, it's a choice for Holden between helping Miller figure out this bigger problem or saving his friends. And he chooses, without hesitation, his friends. He lets LV, the scientist, just go with Miller, go in that weird robot thing. You go figure that out. I'm dealing with Mercury. We have a straight up in-space duel. Guns drawn high noon. Holden wins, but he doesn't kill him. He drags him back and helps his friends. What LV gets to deal with is the problem. We get to, what do we say? What does he say? The brain, the center hub of the entire station, the entire factory. And this is the source. This is the source of the void space. And he needs to go look at it and see what he sees. What does he say? Tell me if you see anything weird. And I'm like, I'm in an alien factory. Everything's weird. But what she sees is sort of like, in my head, I thought like, the Wizard of Oz, the castle of the Wizard of Oz, but floating in air. And completely black, like a black hole, and just like evil emanating from it. This kind of thing. This is what she saw. She sees it just sitting there glowing in the center of this factory space. And she's like, points at it. It's like, you mean that black void looking crap that looks evil? And he's like, what black void crap that looks evil? And that's when it sort of clicks, where he's just a part of the machines, right? He can only move around in the machines. He doesn't have his own sort of body. But even their machine eyes cannot see even the void of it. It looks like empty space to him. But if any of the machines walk in, they instantly stop working. And he's like, I gotta get in. He tries to get in. The other machines try and stop him from getting in. They understand that something about this space can't be crossed. And it goes chaotic. There's a lot of combat at the end here. Our LV sort of walks in it. And then it gets real trippy in there. Real trippy. I'm not going to try and describe it, but you can read the book, you'll see. It's great, grade A science fiction, though, up in that void. Grade A. And this sort of how our story ends. This moment shuts down the facility. The ships can move again, so we can now get on and off the planet easily enough. Some of the people want to stay, some want to go. They're obviously going to take Mercury back to be tried. They leave Baja because it's Holden's decision, and he thinks, he thinks he's going to be okay. I'm like, well, what about the guys who died? I'm like, it gives you a moment where sort of the realization hits him of what he did. And then you get the sense that, prison or not, the punishment would be the same, because it's, if you're not an evil person, killing people is hard on the system. Right? So it all sort of works out in the end. It has a prologue and an epilogue, but I'm choosing not to listen to those until the second time through. I mean, this is the first time I've read these books. Again, very worried that we won't stick the landing, but So far, every bite I've taken has been delicious. And that's Cibola Burns. What is it, Cibola Burns? That's Cibola Burns. Go check it out, people. It's very good. Very good. Ad time? Okay, these are my books. I sell them. You can buy them. It'll help the channel. Or, I think, at least at the time of this recording, you can read them on Kindle Unlimited for the price of that, and then read other books, so that if mine suck, you will have value gotten out of, your money. But if you think mine are good, you can just straight buy them. I think either way hurts that. The Kindle Unlimited is kind of like Spotify for authors. So, that's fine by me too. Or, you can just say, I like these videos I'm going to watch. That works. Or, you can subscribe. Right? We here leave a lot of options to the people. We're not communistic. Okay, people. I will see you next week.